I don't believe in ghosts. At least, I didn't. For most of my life, I laughed off horror movies, creepy legends, and anything to do with the supernatural. But what happened to me last autumn changed everything I thought I knew about fear, and about what waits for us in the dark when we least expect it. I should start by saying this. I wasn't drunk, I wasn't dreaming, and I wasn't trying to fool myself. I remember every detail too vividly to pass it off as imagination. And if anyone else had gone through what I did, they'd be telling this story too if they were lucky enough to still be alive. It began with a road trip. My job had me traveling through small towns across the Midwest, inspecting construction sites. Long hours, bad coffee, and lonely motel rooms were my reality for months. On this particular trip, I had been driving for nearly 6 hours when my GPS lost signal. The highway stretched into an endless strip of black asphalt, the kind of road where the lines blur into nothing and your mind starts to wander. It was late, just past midnight, and I was running low on gas. That's when I saw the exit sign. The sign itself was old, rusted, and half covered with weeds, pointing toward a place I'd never heard of, Raven's Hollow. Something about the name made my stomach tighten, but with the fuel gauge warning me in bright orange, I had no choice. I turned off the main road and into a town that looked like it hadn't seen life in decades. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My body was exhausted, my eyelids heavy, but the fear kept me wired, trembling behind the wheel of my car. The road I drove on stretched endlessly through the forest, and the trees seemed to lean closer with every passing mile, their branches clawing at the air like skeletal fingers. I kept waiting for another face to appear in the mirror, or another photograph to show up in the seat beside me. But hours passed with nothing except that whisper echoing in my mind. My name, over and over again, as if the trees themselves were calling me. The strangest thing was that my phone still had no signal, not even the faintest bar. The digital clock on the dash flickered at random, jumping from midnight to 3 in the morning, then back again, as if time itself didn't work properly here. I told myself if I just kept driving, eventually I'd reach a main road or a town anywhere that wasn't Raven's Hollow. But the farther I went, the more I realized I was wrong. I saw a light in the distance at dawn, a pale orange glow seeping through the trees. Relief surged through me, and I pressed harder on the gas. Maybe it was a town, maybe it was people, but when I broke through the tree line, my stomach turned to ice. It was Raven's Hollow. The same diner, no. The same burned-out church. The same gas station, or what used to be the gas station. Only now, the tombstones lined both sides of the road, stretching into the distance like a graveyard that had grown overnight. Every stone looked identical, but when I slowed down to look, I realized they all had one thing in common. Each of them had my name on it. I slammed the brakes and sat there shaking, my breath fogging the windshield. My name, carved into stone, row after row, grave after grave. Different dates, some in the past, some in the future, as if every possible version of me had died here. That's when I saw him again, the man with the black eyes. He wasn't in the car this time, he was standing at the end of the row of graves, waiting. His body didn't move naturally, as though each joint bent the wrong way, but his face was fixed on mine. He raised one long finger and pointed directly at me. I panicked. I threw the car into reverse, spun it around, and floored it back into the forest. I didn't care where I ended up. I just knew I couldn't let him catch me. Branches scraped across the hood. The wheels skidded on wet dirt, and more than once I nearly lost control, but I kept going until the trees finally opened up again. This time, what I found wasn't the town. It was a cabin. It stood crooked at the edge of a clearing, the wood dark and rotted, the roof sagging under the weight of time. But there was smoke curling out of the chimney. Someone was inside. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to stay away, but I couldn't keep driving forever. I needed help. I needed to see another human being, anyone who could tell me I wasn't losing my mind. So I parked the car and walked toward the cabin, my legs unsteady. The front door creaked open before I even touched it. Inside, The air was thick with the smell of burning wood and something else. I couldn't place, something sour, metallic. The room was dim, lit only by the fire and the stone hearth, and in a chair beside it sat an old woman. Her hair was long and gray, her face wrinkled like cracked leather, and her eyes, they were pale and clouded, but I could feel them watching me. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice rasping like dry leaves. I froze. The words were the same as the man in my back seat. Exactly the same. I don't know how I got here," I stammered. "I was just trying to find the highway. Can you help me?" The woman shook her head slowly. "There is no highway. Not anymore. Not for you." My throat tightened. "What do you mean? Please. I just need to get out of here. I don't care where. Just out." She leaned forward, her gaze heavy. "No one leaves Raven's Hollow. Not once they've been called." I felt the room tilt, the floor seeming to sink beneath my feet. "Called?" I whispered. The woman raised a shaking hand and pointed to the mantel above the fire. My eyes followed, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Sitting there, among the dust and ash, was another photograph. It was me again. This time, I was standing outside the cabin, my hand already on the door. Only I hadn't even been here until minutes ago. My legs nearly gave out. "What is this? What's happening to me?" The old woman's voice dropped to a whisper. "He marked you. The Hollow has claimed you. The more you struggle, the deeper you go. The graves, the faces, the whispers, they are not warnings. They are invitations." I shook my head violently. No, this isn't real. I'll leave. I'll drive. Her hand shot out and gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "Listen to me. There is only one way out. One way to escape the Hollow." My heart pounded. "Tell me." Her clouded eyes locked on mine. "You have to face him." The fire cracked loudly, making me jump. When I looked back at her, my stomach twisted. She wasn't holding my wrist anymore. She wasn't even sitting in the chair. The chair was empty. I stumbled back, hitting the wall. The cabin was silent, except for the fire, and the photograph still sat on the mantel, staring back at me with my own terrified face. Then I heard it, the floorboards creaking upstairs, slow, deliberate steps moving across the ceiling. Someone or something was up there. I ran out of the cabin and back to my car, fumbling with the keys, my entire body trembling. I didn't look back until the engine roared to life, and when I did, I wished I hadn't. The old woman was standing in the upstairs window, only she wasn't old anymore. Her face had changed, twisted into the same man's face I'd seen before, the black-eyed figure. He stared down at me, smiling, and this time, I didn't just hear the whisper. I heard the scream. It ripped through the forest, through my bones, like 1,000 voices crying out in agony all at once. I hit the gas and tore down the dirt road, my hands white-knuckled on the wheel. But deep down, I knew what the old woman had said was true. There was no highway. There was no escape. Not until I faced him. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No humming streetlights, no distant music, not even the sound of crickets. The second thing I noticed was that the houses, what few there were, looked abandoned. Windows were shattered, porches rotted, paint peeled away by time. Yet, strangely, I had the distinct feeling I was being watched. I pulled into what looked like an old gas station. A single flickering bulb above the entrance cast a weak cone of light. Against all logic, the pump still worked. I filled my tank, breathing a sigh of relief, but the hairs on my neck stood stiff. There was no attendant, no sound of an engine anywhere in town, and yet, I swore I saw movement in the shadows across the street. I told myself I was just tired. I was ready to get back on the highway, but as I slid behind the wheel, I realized something terrifying. The road I had entered on was gone. I don't mean I couldn't find it. I mean it literally wasn't there anymore. Where the cracked asphalt should have stretched back toward the main highway, There was only thick forest, dark and endless. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I drove around the block, desperate to find another way out. But every turn led me back to the same gas station. It was like the town was a loop with no exit. My headlights caught glimpses of strange shapes moving between the buildings, shadows that slithered just out of sight. Once, I saw what looked like a person standing in the road, but when I blinked, they were gone. I finally parked in front of what looked like a diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly with the word "open," even though the windows were so dusty they barely let light through. Against my better judgment, I went inside. The air smelled like mold and rust. The booths were torn, the counter coated in grime, but every single stool was pulled out as though someone had just been sitting there. A jukebox in the corner suddenly clicked on, humming a song so distorted it was almost unrecognizable, like a record being dragged across broken glass. That's when I heard it, the whisper. It was faint at first, like wind slipping through cracks in the wall. But as I froze, I realized it was words. My name. Someone was whispering my name from somewhere deep in the diner. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I ran outside, gasping for air. But when I looked back at the building, it wasn't a diner anymore. It was a church. A burned-out, hollow church with blackened walls and a broken steeple. I staggered back, nearly falling to my knees. The air felt thicker, colder, and then I saw them faces in the windows of the nearby houses. Pale, eyeless faces staring straight at me, mouths hanging open in silent screams. I sprinted back to my car, slamming the door and locking it. My headlights illuminated the street, but now the gas station was gone. In its place was a row of tombstones, their inscriptions too eroded to read. One of them had fresh soil piled in front of it. Fresh, as though someone had just been buried there. I should have driven, should have floored it and tried anything to escape, but I couldn't. Something had frozen me in place, like invisible chains wrapping around my chest. And then, from the rearview mirror, I saw him. A man was sitting in my back seat. He was impossibly thin, his skin stretched tight over bones, and his eyes, God, his eyes were black pits that seemed to suck in all light. He leaned forward slowly, his breath icy against my ear. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered. I screamed, jerking the wheel. The car spun, the world outside twisting into streaks of shadow and light until I slammed into something and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was still in the driver's seat, but the car was parked in the middle of a dirt road I'd never seen before. The town was gone. No diner, no gas station, no church, no faces, just trees, silent, endless trees. I thought maybe I'd imagined it all, until I looked at the passenger seat. Sitting there was an old, yellowed photograph. It showed me standing in front of the gas station, looking terrified. And behind me, in the shadows, that same man with black eyes. I dropped the picture, my hands trembling. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. From deep within the forest, I heard the whisper again. Louder this time. My name. And it was coming closer. I don't know how long I sat there, paralyzed with fear, before I finally turned the key in the ignition and drove, not caring where the road led. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't escaped Raven's Hollow. That maybe I never would. The forest swallowed me whole as I drove, headlights slashing through the darkness. I didn't even know if I was following a road anymore. The ground beneath me felt uneven, roots and rocks crunching beneath the tires. Every nerve in my body screamed to keep moving, to outrun the scream that still echoed in my skull. But I couldn't shake the woman's no, the man's words. Face him. It replayed over and over in my mind, like a broken record. If I kept running, I'd never escape. I knew that now. The hollow would bend roads and twist time until I was back at the diner, or the graves, or the cabin. I was trapped in a loop. So, I did something I hadn't done since this nightmare began. I slowed down. The car crawled to a stop on a dirt path I didn't recognize. The forest pressed in on all sides, silent and expectant. My hands shook on the wheel, but I forced myself to breathe, to listen, and in that silence, I heard it again. My name, whispered, but not from behind me this time. It came from ahead, deeper in the woods. I left the car running, lights burning a hole through the dark, and stepped out. The cold hit me instantly, sharp and biting, but I kept moving. The ground was soft, damp with rot, and each step felt like I was sinking further into the hollow's grip. The whispers grew louder with every step, weaving in and out of each other like voices in a choir. Some sounded angry, some sounded sad, but they all carried the same weight. They knew me. They wanted me. I broke through into another clearing. This one was different from the cabin. Larger, empty, except for one thing. A single gravestone stood in the center. I felt my chest tighten as I walked closer, every instinct begging me to turn back. The stone was gray, weathered, but the name carved into it was fresh. It was mine. Not just my name, my date of birth, too. And beneath it, a date of death. It was today. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. My eyes darted around the clearing, searching for movement, but the forest was still. Too still. I was about to turn and run when the ground beneath the grave split open with a sickening crack. The dirt shifted, then something climbed out. At first, I thought it was a shadow. Black, shapeless, writhing. But then it stood upright, and I saw the outline of a man. His skin was pale, stretched too tightly across his bones. His eyes were black pits, endless and hungry. The same face I had seen in the car, in the graves, in the cabin window. He smiled, and my blood ran cold. "You finally came," he said. His voice wasn't a whisper this time. It was everywhere at once, surrounding me, inside me. I couldn't move. My body was frozen in place, my breath shallow and ragged. Who are you?" He tilted his head, like the question amused him. "You already know. You've known since you first heard your name." My throat was dry, my words barely audible. "Why me?" He stepped closer, his movements jerky, unnatural, as though every joint bent against itself. "The Hollow chose you. It always chooses. Every name, every soul, drawn here when the time comes. You were marked long before you arrived." I shook my head violently. No, I don't belong here. I didn't do anything. Existence is enough," he interrupted, his grin widening. "Every road leads here eventually. You just found yours sooner." My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to run, but I remembered what the old woman had said. The only way out was to face him, so I stood my ground, though my legs threatened to give way beneath me. "What do you want from me?" His eyes narrowed. "You." He lunged. I stumbled back, barely dodging as his hand shot out, long fingers grazing my arm like ice. Pain seared through me, burning and freezing at the same time, and I cried out. He was stronger than anything human, faster too, but he wasn't unstoppable. Not here, not now. I grabbed a branch from the ground and swung it at him, the wood cracking across his face. He staggered, but instead of blood, black smoke poured from the wound. He laughed, the sound like shattering glass. "You can't kill me," he hissed. "I am the Hollow. I am every grave you saw, every scream you heard." The clearing spun, the trees bending inward, their branches clawing at me as if they wanted to drag me into the ground. My vision blurred, but I forced myself to focus on him. If he was the Hollow, then facing him wasn't about fighting. It was about something deeper. I dropped the branch, my chest heaving. "You're not the Hollow," I said, my voice shaking. "You're me." For a moment, he froze. The smile faltered. "You're the part of me that's afraid," I went on, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess them. "The part that's been running my whole life. That's why I see my name everywhere. That's why the graves are mine. This place isn't real, it's my fear, my death. staring back at me. His face twisted, the grin snapping back into place. And fear always wins. He lunged again, faster this time, but I didn't move. I stood my ground. When his hand closed around my throat, I didn't fight. I stared into those black eyes, forcing myself not to look away. My vision dimmed, my lungs screamed, but I kept my gaze locked. And then, something happened. The black in his eyes flickered. For a split second, I saw something else, my own reflection. My face, tired and broken, staring back at me. I tightened my jaw and whispered, "Not this time." Light burst from his chest, blinding and white, searing through the clearing. The scream tore from his throat, but it wasn't his scream, it was mine. Every whisper, every voice I had heard in the hollow, rose into one final cry, then shattered into silence. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the ground. The grave was gone. The clearing was empty. The forest was quiet. I stumbled to my feet, dazed, and looked around. The trees were still twisted, but they weren't leaning anymore. The air smelled fresher, less heavy. And when I pulled my phone from my pocket, my breath caught. There was a signal. I staggered back to my car, my legs weak, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine purred to life, the dashboard clock steady and bright. Midnight. For the first time in days, if days had even passed, I felt time move again. I drove. This time, the road led me somewhere new. After an hour, I saw lights ahead, not the pale glow of Raven's Hollow, but real lights. Street lights. A gas station. Civilization. When I pulled into the lot, I sat there in stunned silence, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. People moved inside the convenience store, laughing, talking, alive. The world had gone on without me. But I hadn't left the hollow behind. Not completely. When I looked in the rearview mirror, for just a second, I didn't see my own reflection. I saw him, smiling.